Okay, we are alive. So welcome everyone. Good evening. And I made some script to not make some mistakes because my English not so good, but I'll try my best. Hope everyone is fine. So good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you, everyone who's watching us live and those who are joining us for the recorded session. We have an excellent session today, as others. And I want to make the most of our time because, so I will keep this brief. My name is Daniel Nardin. I'm a journalist based in Belém, the capital of Pará, not capital of Amazon, in the Brazilian Amazon. I'm the executive director of Amazonia Vox, and it's an independent journalism initiative focused in solutions journalism. We also offer a free database of sources from Amazon and a database of communication freelancers from our region. I think it's important to explain it for you who doesn't know about Amazonia Vox, and I invite you to visit amazoniavox.com to learn more about our platform and our free tools in our website. So I'm here. I'm very happy here today because we have the help from of Larissa Noguch. She's also a journalist from Belém. She's training manager at amazoniavox.com and co-coordinates this initiative with me. This webinar series has 6 sessions and runs until September 3rd, every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Brazil time. This series is a partnership with Night Center for Journalism in the Americas, an initiative of University of Texas at Austin. And I'm finishing here. This series is also part of Amazonia Vox special coverage for COP30 with support from the Itaú Foundation and Roche, and the simultaneous Spanish translation is provided by the organization Ambiente y Sociedad from Colombia, and we thank you them for their support. And sure, with thanks to Lúcio Mesquita, who is translating the session to Portuguese, and Carlos to Spanish version. So, today we have 3 incredible speakers who are true leaders in their field, and I'll give a quick intro for each one. Charlotte Scaddan is a senior advisor on information integrity at the UN, and she leads the effort to strengthen the information ecosystem by implementing the UN Global Principles for Information Integrity and related policies. Cris Tardáguila is the founder and a partner at Agência Lupa. She was director of the International Fact-Checking Network and senior program director at the International Center for Journalists. Cris also the author of 3 books already published. And Laura Zommer is an award-winning journalist and a pioneer in fact-checking. She's the CEO and co-founder of Factchequeado, a collaborative initiative that fights misinformation affecting Latino and Hispanic communities in the US and works to close the gap in access to reliable information in Spanish. She's also ICFJ Knight Fellow and Ashoka Fellow, and has played a key role in building the fact-checking ecosystem in Latin American and worldwide, like Cris Tardáguila and Charlotte Scaddan. So let's start the presentations for this session. We'll start with Charlotte, after Cris, then Lauro. You can drop your questions in the chat, your comments, your suggestions, and we'll mention it, a few of them in the end for our Q&A moment. So, Charlotte, it's all of you, and I will be handing the slides for you. So just say next, and when you are ready for the next slide, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you. I wasn't sure if you had my slides actually. So yeah, I don't know if I made any changes since I sent them. I hope not. But anyway, I can work to it. First of all, I just want to say, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be, especially with other panelists who are doing such wonderful work. I would also just say, please never apologize for your English. First of all, your English is great. But also, I make mistakes in English, and I don't have any excuse because I'm from England. So we don't judge anyone on language here. But I just want to say that for me, this is such an important aspect of our work, speaking to and with the journalists who are really on the front lines of what is, in the eyes of the UN and the world, one of the most challenging issues of our time, and that is the climate crisis. And journalists carry such an important responsibility to share reliable, accurate information and really hold decision makers to account in the public sphere. So you mentioned that I am Senior Advisor on Information Integrity at UN headquarters in New York. I have a very small but determined team, and we work really at the intersection of policy research and strategic communications. And our goal really is to strengthen the integrity of the global information ecosystem. And today, I'm going to focus, obviously, on the growing risks to information integrity that threaten climate action, what we can do together to confront them, especially in the lead up to COP30 in Berlin. So maybe if we go to the first slide. Thank you. When we're talking about information integrity, well, what do we mean by that, and why does it matter? So for us, information integrity is kind of an aspirational goal. It's referring to an information ecosystem where reliable, accurate information is available to all, and where people are able to engage meaningfully in public life, make informed decisions, and exercise their rights. Strengthening information integrity means building resilient societies that can foster public trust and empowerment. And when it comes to climate action, it means that communities, leaders, and governments have what they need, the information they need to make informed decisions and actions for people and all of our planet. But in doing so, in trying to achieve information integrity, we face many risks. We call them information risks, risks across the information landscape. Now, these include disinformation, hate speech, restrictions on media freedom, the malicious use of technologies, including, of course, AI technologies, all to undermine the integrity of information spaces. And, of course, I should say that while doing this and while addressing these risks, we do so while vigorously upholding freedom of expression first and foremost. But we're in fact witnessing an escalation of two deeply connected crises that I would like to highlight. And that is the erosion of trust in the information ecosystem more broadly, kind of in general, as people don't know what is real and what to believe. And simultaneously, efforts to stall or sabotage climate action, often stemming from very powerful interests. Now, with climate, the way that we see the risk is twofold. Firstly, purveyors of climate disinformation and hate speech and related tactics are actively seeking to undermine climate action itself. And this is by questioning established science or attacking researchers, undermining international cooperation. And they're also using climate change as a wedge issue to polarize societies and disrupt democratic processes. And we've seen this playbook used across Latin America, from Brazil to Colombia to Mexico. Now, while every context and every country has their own set of dynamics, we've seen some consistency and commonalities across borders and regions, honestly, in some of the tactics being used. So if you go to the next slide, please. So these include, when it comes to climate, and by the way, I should just say that, in the previous slides, you saw a list of issues and goals that are impacted. And I showed that really just to stress how interconnected all of this is, right? Climate action is obviously key, but it really does connect to all of those other goals and global issues that we have. So some of the tactics that we've seen commonly employed to undermine climate action include discrediting the consensus on climate science by framing it as ideology and something that's politically motivated rather than evidence-based, attacking the credibility of climate scientists and advocates. And I'm sure everyone watching has experienced attacking journalists who are covering climate, positioning and elevating pseudo experts, people who are not really experts, but they are positioned as trusted voices who are defenders of the interests of ordinary people, exploiting social divisions and existing grievances to create backlash. Now, this could be against indigenous communities or green policies or just global corporation. And we also see even promoting conspiracy theories that link climate policies to control by global elites, including control of the weather. And, that is actually something that we've seen coming from some fairly high profile sources, even though it seems a little bit extreme. So here I just have a few specific examples to illustrate some of what I've just described. So firstly, if you go to the next slide. Thanks. This you'll see is Australian Peter Clack. He is a well-known climate denier, and he uses graphs here. You see, I'm really showing this to really visualize how certain visual prompts or coded language are used. So you can't actually tell what's on this graph. It's just a lot of squiggles, and there really is no substance to it, but it's a signal. It's a coded language, a sign to anyone watching it to say, or seeing it to say, this is real, this is evidence, this is science. And we see that tactic used a lot. Many of his posts combine the central claim that climate change is unproven with a kind of more conspiratorial culture wars angle. So he frequently includes references to Marxists at the UN perpetuating a hoax around environmental science. And he often claims there is no climate consensus. So this was amplified by a high-profile political figure in Latin America. And it's a good example of what we term information laundering. It can be a good way to understand this kind of tactic. It's similar to money laundering, which, as you know, is disguising the origins of dirty money or illegal flows of money. And we see false or misleading claims like these deliberately cycled through many layers of sources or platforms to make them appear more credible and legitimate and more palatable for the public. And then, as you see, that they could be then amplified by high-profile figures. One observation from our research to highlight here is that the content used to execute these tactics often feels local and very targeted to local audiences, though the playbook is also global. Some of the approaches are quite subtle, such as, using a loaded question or a misleading comment. Other times, it's very brazen and more explicitly conspiratorial, such as the open use of AI-generated videos and images, pushing claims or conspiracies for entertainment, which you can see here actually in the second example. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is from an influencer in Argentina. And I'm showing it because it's useful to highlight the use of cartoons and satire, which we've seen for a long time used by adversarial disinformation actors. This one, though, is an explicit use of generative AI. They're not even trying to hide that it's Gen AI. And it carries this conspiratorial framing. It depicts Agenda 2030 and some UN symbolism as sinister and threatening. And then one last example here, if you go to the next slide. Again, this one uses what we think of as coded language. Thank you. And in this case, that's phrases that we regularly see as part of this tactic, especially in Latin America. And that is Agenda 2030, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, New World Order, the SDG symbol. And this particular example also uses fear-mongering with a very alarmist visual, along with these conspiracy claims. So these are just a few examples of the kind of thing we're seeing in information spaces. But it's really important to focus not only on the what, and I would say not so much on the what is being said, but to look at who is benefiting and what is making these tactics effective, because in some cases they are. So who benefits? If you go to the next slide. I mean, the winners are pretty clear, to be honest. It's those with financial, political, or strategic motivations to maintain the status quo and to undermine climate action. So that is, of course, fossil fuel interests. It's also political actors who are seeking potentially to deflect from their own policy failures or may have other strategic motives, and various enablers along the way who profit from confusion and delay. And that includes digital influencers and media personalities who monetize the outrage around climate. And then, of course, there are losers. If the next slide, please. If you go to, just as with climate change itself, the most vulnerable and those with the fewest protections bear the heaviest burden and ultimately the cost. So obviously marginalized communities. I mean, in Latin America, this is certainly the case, but also across the world. Indigenous peoples, those in rural and also urban areas, they're disproportionately harmed by the many climate impacts and by the disinformation that delays climate action. The media, right? Media viability is, when is under threat, when other actors are profiting from the monetization of disinformation, credible media suffers. And, I probably don't need to tell the audience watching here that the impact of the digital advertising business model on independent media is existential. Information integrity is not possible without a free, independent, and pluralistic media. And when it comes to climate action, we need that reliable coverage more than ever. Businesses and consumers lose out in many ways. And there are, of course, a multitude of impacts directly from climate change on businesses and consumers, many products directly affected. But there's also a range of implications from climate disinformation for peaceful, stable economies. And I mentioned earlier, right, how climate can be used as a wedge issue to undermine democratic processes and more. So, that, of course, directly impacts consumers and businesses, that level of instability. Advertisers and brands are at risk because of the lack of transparency in the advertising supply chain. Brands often don't know where their ads are even being placed online, and they could be inadvertently funding individuals or groups that are spreading false or misleading climate information and that are not aligned with that brand's corporate values or image. And also, to be honest, it's wasting their ad budgets. And ultimately, of course, we all lose because climate impacts don't respect borders or socioeconomic status, and the displacement and destruction and disruption are getting worse. And disinformation, likewise, is polluting our information spaces, and it accumulates and it spreads. So what are we doing about all this, and how can everyone watching engage? If you go to the next slide. I mean, this is obviously a huge, huge challenge. Oh, wait, that is actually the wrong slide. I don't know. Yeah, maybe just keep it on that one. That's fine. Thank you. It's a huge challenge, and it's why the UN and Brazil and UNESCO and other partners, including several countries, have launched the Global Initiative for Information Integrity on Climate Change. This is grounded in the work of the UN Global Principles for Information Integrity that were mentioned earlier. They were launched last year by the Secretary General and are a framework for multi-stakeholder action. And that's the framework within which we work. We, as the Global Initiative, recognize that urgent and ambitious climate action is not possible without strengthening information integrity. So we're focusing on funding research to expand our understanding beyond the global north, where, to be honest, much or most of the resources have thus far been invested in a handful of countries, gathering evidence from around the world, including extensive work across Latin America, to inform strategic action. I should also add here that we really are looking to boost and support research in languages other than English, which has very much dominated. And this is all with the goal of developing and improving our shared tools and practices to support strengthening climate information integrity. Our third work stream is what we've been working on with the current COP presidency, and that's to integrate information integrity into the COP30 process. So a big step forward for us is that information integrity has been added to the COP action agenda for the first time ever. And that's already, for this COP, for COP30. And that's already elevated the issue on the global climate stage And it will mean it's even more visible when it comes to COP30 and Belém. And obviously, ideally, we would like to see information integrity reflected in the COP outcome itself. So we're supporting projects through the Initiatives Global Fund, for which we received, including journalism projects, I should add, for which we received really an overwhelming number of proposals. And I think the level of demand highlights the scale of the challenge and the urgent need for greater support. And we also recently launched the Mutirao, the call for action on information integrity, which has already inspired many contributions of people and groups submitting concrete solutions. That's actually open until the end of this month, and selected submissions will be showcased in Belém and also online. So what can journalists do? If you go to the next slide, I hope it's vaguely the right one. Let me see. Okay, that was more on the global initiative. If you keep going. Yes, thank you. So what can journalists do? So, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the role of journalists is really critical. So as trusted intermediaries, journalists bring relevant context and insight and expose some of the hidden interests that are undermining climate action and our societal resilience. So a few ideas for, concrete actions that journalists and those other media professionals can take are, firstly, covering some of the information risks that I've already mentioned that are jeopardizing climate action. I know that, resources are constrained, but that beat of covering climate disinformation and related tactics is so important. Explaining the COP process and other climate processes in relatable terms, highlighting the local relevance of, frankly, what can seem like very distant global processes to local audiences is key. Put front and center voices from frontline communities, local leaders and advocates, those who represent the most affected and the most vulnerable, to make sure that they are visible in information spaces and that decision makers are hearing from them. Use AI ethically, of course, be transparent. Transparency is really key for addressing information integrity risks, since it is used by our detractors as part of the narrative that we're secretive and elitist and that we're fabricating climate change. So the more transparent we can be about, our sources of information, what we do know, what we don't know, is really important. And of course, collaborate with those working across sectors, not looking at how climate intersects with other key issues that are affecting communities everywhere. And while it can feel sometimes, to be honest, working in this space, especially working on climate, that the challenges are insurmountable, we can really use and concentrate on key opportunities that occur before these major moments when, the eyes of others are on us and, we have that momentum. So obviously that is now leading up to COP and, also around extreme weather events and elections and other things. But we can really use that to respond as a climate community. And obviously on the part of the UN, we are really committed to this and look forward to working with all of you to, continue and support up to COP30 and also beyond. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, Charlotte. Thank you so much. And I hope you keep it with us because maybe we have some questions after the presentations. And I will invite Cris, correct, Cris, to present. Just a minute to find your presentation here. And now, just a minute.
I hope you can hear me. Can you? Cool.
Yep.
Well, great. Hello, everyone. It's amazing to be here. And Charlotte, I loved your presentation because it has lots of connections with what I'm about to say too. I think we're on the same page and we're probably going to make the same call. Laura is also probably going to highlight some, similar stuff. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to actually have a great impact in the journalism community. Daniel, thanks for inviting me. Larissa, who is in the back end, thank you. And thanks for the all sponsors, the Night Center, and all of you. So guys, good afternoon. My name is Cris. I'm the founder of Lupa. It's the main fact-checking organization in Brazil. I'm currently based in Washington, D.C. And I'll try to be as fast as possible because Laura Zommer has lots to teach you as always. And I just want to go over some information that I have been working on, not only through Lupa, but also on an organization based in DC where I work with. It's called the Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas. And we have done lots of work in trying to understand. And Danielle, let's go to the next slide, please. Try to understand what exactly is the next step in terms of combating disinformation. And the first thing, if I wanted to have you memorizing one thing from my presentation today, is this first sentence. After 10 years working in fact-checking and combating disinformation, I think I finally learned that the claims and the examples of this information, they change very often. They adjust to your local realities, to your politicians, to your liars. But the meta narratives, they don't. So what we're saying is that there are a couple of meta narratives in the planet, and Charlotte went over a few of them, that will be around and have been around for a while. And what we see is once a claim or an image or a cartoon is fact-checked, what liars do is that they just revamp it in another way. But the meta-narrative, for example, that Agenda 2030 is bad or that climate change isn't a problem, that is not changing. So one of my proposals for you tonight is to actually understand a new strategy on fighting that kind of disinformation and raising resilience among our audiences. And I know you're all journalists or maybe interested in journalism, content producers. So I'm inviting you today to actually work with us into what we call pre-bunking. And what means pre-bunking is we are going to not only say something is false or exaggerated or out of context, but we are aiming to tell people and to show our audiences that every single falsehood is built out of a certain amount of techniques and tactics that we have already tracked, and we strongly understand them. So by learning the tactics and the techniques that the disinformers use nowadays to keep the meta narratives traveling the planet, and explaining to our audiences how those techniques can be detected and how they can spot, each person can spot the techniques or the tactics used behind each disinformation, maybe we will have a stronger and more resilient society. So what I wanted to go over today is a couple of studies. The first one, and Danielle, next slide, please. The first one is from an amazing researcher, Ben Nemo. I think he's currently at OpenAI, but he's been in Meta, and he's done a lot of studies on this information and trying to understand the techniques behind it. Is what we call the 5 Ds, right? So I'm going to go over the 5 techniques that Ben Nemo tracked and on his research, and that research is easily found online. If you Google 5 Ds of disinformation, you will get the paper from Ben Nemo. But these tactics, I'm bringing them to you because they, of course, apply to environmental issues, but they apply to any kind of falsehood. So it's something that might work for you, even if you're not just working with climate or environmental issues. So the first D, and I really want to emphasize this is the tactic that it's called dismissing. So this is, I'm sure, if you're in the chat and you can raise your hand, I'm sure you've seen this. This is quite easy, is the attempt of the disinformer to discredit whoever points out their mistakes or their falsehoods. And I brought here a couple of fact checks. They are both about Greta Thunberg. You all know the activist, and how serious have been, how seriously she has been attacked, and how many falsehoods about her person have been told in, let's say, last couple of years, or maybe 5 to 10 years even, just because she's a voice, just because she's pointing out problems in the speeches of powerful, right? So dismissing people, the disinformers, the tactic here, the dismiss tactics aims to discredit the critics. Yeah. And I bet you all have seen this, and in not only in with Greta, but also with several other players in your countries, in your nations. That's very, very common. And I think Ben Nemo was completely right and pointed it out as the first D on the 5 Ds of disinformation. Danielle, let's go over the second. Guys, the second one is also extremely common. If you're probably covering elections or politics, or even if you were active as anti-disinformation specialists during COVID, you've seen that. It's distortion. So here what we see, behind this technique that disinformers apply very often in the environmental universe, is that they gather different information that are all true, and they change how it's presented, right? For example, I have here 2 fact checks that I saw yesterday. Someone stating in India that since it's cold today, there's no climate change. There is no global warming, right? So no, I mean, it's true, it's cold today, but this is not used, that cannot be used as an explanation for, or a reason, or a proof that the world isn't warming up, which is wrong, right? That second thing is, and again, I'm going to repeat myself very often, guys, in this conversation here, is that if we are capable of not only fact checking that and saying that statement is false, but also saying, hey, dear audience, please notice that this is one type of technique here, that opens up our audience's eyes, so they can, in a second moment or a different quote or a different situation, they will be able to spot the distortion by themselves, right? Let's go to the third one. Danielle, please. Okay, guys, this one is very, 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 very common too. And I think Ben Nemo did a great job with the third D, which is distracting. So this is like when something is going bad, you just try to shift people's attention and you create something else, right? So here we have one example that comes from VOA, Voice of America in the United States, saying, somebody said that for the developed countries, historically speaking, they have been polluting much more than the developing countries. I mean, okay, that might be true or false. I don't care. But what we're seeing here is the clear attempt of this person, this man, I have no clue who that is, to avoid being responsible or being held accountable for his country or his own decisions. So it's like saying, well, I'm doing my job, but well, this other person isn't doing theirs, so I might just stop doing my work. So it's kind of like blaming others as a way to distract, divert the attention. So don't look at me, people. I'm doing my stuff. You should be complaining about something else or someone else. So that is quite common in climate, and you will see not only in this sort of blaming situation, like what country pollutes more, what country is more responsible, what country has better laws. You will hear, and I hope that doesn't happen in COP30 in Belém, but I bet it will happen. We will hear the blaming, right? We don't need to spend time with people blaming each other. What we need to see is that, well, let's just sit around the table and decide what's next, correct? I hope that's clear, the third D. Let's go to the fourth, Danielle. Well, fourth is deterring, right? That is kind of like, this is kind of like outrageous for me. I believe we're all journalists here, or editors, or reporters, or photographers, or infographers. Anyway, so what we're seeing is disinformers, not only in the environmental universe, but also in any other part of the global conversation. Disinformers try to discourage people who expose falsehoods. And I brought this headline. This comes from a study by Stanford. And they have been tracking the amount of organizations, think tanks that are popping up here and there to actually pressure people that have been pointed out that there is a crisis in the quality of information regarding environmental. So this research is amazing, very well done. But what we're seeing here, guys, is that this, I really wanted you to, for the next time you see this happening, make sure you offer your audience this perspective that this is not isolated. Like people are trying to silence, for example, Greta Thunberg, to go back to her. They're not doing just because she's being very active, but this is part of a plan that even brings together the creation of organizations, think tanks, lots of money, right, to pressure those who are pointed out the problems in information integrity. So next time you see the fourth D popping up, make sure you tell your audience about that. Let's move to the fifth and to make sure we reach all of them. The fifth is the vision, and I'm happy Charlotte brought that up. It's quite common that we see influencers that are not truly connected to the climate or the environmental topics. They're just profiting from the conflict, right? So widening the visions is a tactic. It's not that person truly believes on what she or he are exposing or sharing or are commenting. They do not really care. They want the noise, because nowadays, and I'm not going to dive into that, but nowadays noise equals money on social media. So next time you fact check and you debunk or you call out an influencer regarding the content that they have said that is wrong or false about environmental causes, make sure to remember your audience that noise and drama and emotion, those are big money drivers in the online community. So next time your audience sees a influencer posting something, we hope that they will be able to think about that and say, maybe he or she does not truly believe that. Maybe this is just a post to make money, right? Let's be clear on that. Now, Danielle, if I have time, I'd like to go over this other study, and also openly available. I have even the website there as a source. It's a very beautiful website. Inoculation Techniques is a study by Cambridge University. I think there are a couple of other universities also involved. We're talking now about the content, right? Not the strategy of spreading the disinformation, not only the techniques used to spread or attack, but also the content itself, how the phrasing and the language of this information is built. And this study is very, very beautiful. Just keep in mind, guys, that emotional language, and I think Charlotte mentioned that, is powerful. And I just mentioned the 5D is also about, how emotion plays a role. So next time you see something that is false, and you see the use of adjectives, exclamation marks, point that out to your audience. This is something that's catchy. Incoherence, it's very, very common, especially when people are in huge arguments and huge fights. You see people like merging things together that just does not make sense if you really spend a lot of time explaining that. False dichotomies, quite common, right? If somebody says that, well, if today's code, there's no climate change, it's not an either or situation. This is a false dilemma. Let's explain to our audience, right? Scapegoating, it's kind of like what we see in the 5D, in the first number 1, 5D, scapegoating. You have to blame someone for what's happening. It's never you, right? So make sure you explain that. It's another extra paragraph or another minute in your television show or your radio show. Go over the techniques. And finally, the ad hominem attack. It's an expression in Latin that says, well, let's just attack the messenger. Make sure you highlight that. So I think that's about all I have today. And I really want to give the floor back to Danielle and Lau. I'm always available, guys. Thank you for having me. I hope it wasn't that fast. But again, keep in mind that we're fighting this information not only as a unit, but also showing the tactics and the plan behind it. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Cris. And just to mention it, I met Agência Lupa during the COVID situation in Brazil. And the work of Agência Lupa during the crisis, the pandemic, was incredible and so important work. And I'm sure Agência Lupa will be so important in this climate crisis. And thank you so much for joining us and to accept our invite to be here. And I'm really honored to have here also Laura Zommer. And I met Laura because we are colleagues during the night fellowship in ICFJ. And I have the opportunity to listen Laura in some events and just keep watching and listen. And now I have this opportunity again. And
okay.
You only have 15 minutes, okay, Lau?
Yeah, then thank you for having. I'm going to start. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm really honored to have you and to be on during this workshop or conversation with Charlotte and Cris, but also thanking everyone that is connected now, trying to learn more or inspire themselves, be more informed about topics that they are challenging all of us, but also helping us to create new strategies, to rethink what we are doing. One of the things that I learned in my almost 30 years being journalist is we need to create new strategies to be more impactful and to capture the attention of the audience and the community that we are trying to serve. I always repeat that when I started being journalist, high quality journalists used to be well reported, well written. That is not any longer high quality journalists, at least not for me serving Hispanic communities or Latino communities who consume their information in Spanish in the US. Then I have a very long presentation, but don't worry if I'm not arrived to the end, because Daniel and Larissa are gonna share this presentation with all of you. All the presentation has a link to you to go further. And there's a lot of slides that I'm gonna just mention them but skip them, because as Cris mentioned, Charlotte's presentation and also Cris' presentation is pretty aligned with mine. Then what is Factchequeado? You already presented Daniel, then we can just go ahead to that.
Just a minute, I used the wrong presentation now.
Okay, don't worry.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna try to focus on some examples, how the main narratives of climate disinformation have been evolving, and also focus on what we can do, what we've learned about doing. And I agree completely with Cris, and not to focus any longer on a specific cases, but use the examples of the cases that can be viral and can be in the mind of the people to help them to better navigate the disorder ecosystem. Then what is Factchequeado? Daniel already mentioned it. It's an organization working in the US to better inform Hispanic people and combat or try to fight disinformation. Go ahead, please. Before we start, and this is a kind of every time that I have the opportunity, I ask every colleague, go ahead, not to refer to this phenomenon as fake news. And I know that probably people are gonna continue talking about fake news when they refer to disinformation, but at least when we are in a space like this, I'd like to invite you not to refer to this phenomenon as fake news, because they are really not news. And in lots of cases, what is more important to understand, to better deal with this information, is that they are not completely false. They are narratives that are built or are based on real and factual information, but the bad actors or the disinformer manage to exaggerate them, put them out of context, add components like the conspiracy theories that Charlotte mentioned before to change the message. Then go ahead. These are crazy examples. I think we don't necessarily need to go there. Then about the main narratives or the evolution of climate disinformation. We've been seeing at the beginning, there were the classic denialism, people that present or deny the problem. We are not any longer, in most of the cases, on that situation. Like the climate crisis, the phenomenon related to floods or fire emergencies or whatever, makes the bad actors or force the bad actors probably to change their narratives to be more effective on the audience. Then we are not any longer in many of the content that we are monitoring or seeing with people saying climate change that don't exist, but on another moment of climate disinformation that some research call it strategic skepticism or execticism. They are not any longer denying that climate change is a problem in lots of cases, but they deny that the solution can be real, or that the problem has been created by humans. Go ahead, please, to the next one. Then we published an article 2 weeks ago in Spanish. The ones that can read Spanish said explain all these changes, and there's a paper written on that with really good examples that I recommend you to take a look on. And as Charlotte mentioned, it's not just denying the climate change or denying that the solutions can work, but adding this, go ahead, Daniel, please, but adding this idea of conspiracy theories. As Cris mentioned, one of the strategies that we've been using now in Factchequeado, previous in my former organization in Chequeado, is in topics with such a big political or partisan polarization, when you have leaders that are just stand up in a position like a kind of brand or presentation of their own identity, in lots of cases, making articles saying this is true or this is false is not always the best. Then going to a more explanatory way and explain the public why this is an article. For the ones that don't read Spanish, it's an article that explains why it is true, the climate change, and you don't necessarily need to believe on the denialist narratives. And then it's go to each of the narratives one by one, explaining the public or the audience which are that tactics or that strategies. As Charlotte mentioned, and this is also something that we've been seeing, there's two lemmas that I used to repeat always. That is, disinformation is at the same time a global phenomenon and a hyper-local phenomenon. And the main narratives are that global ones, and actors, depending on who they are and the country where they are operating, or if they are operating cross-border or not, adapted with some names or details or cultural aspect that make that story or that narrative to be more appealing and more engaging for the community that they are targeting. And then that can be, in a way, an advantage for all of us. Because, as I always repeat, bad actors don't want to be innovative, don't want to surprise us. What they want to be is efficient. They want to earn money and power, and they're going to repeat one time after the other the same narrative if that narrative is working. Then, knowing all this, with all this knowledge, we can better prepare us as a newsroom to a coverage, to a specific event, to in the US that we have now the hurricane season or whatever. We have not the chance, but the duty to be prepared, because we know in advance that bad actors are going to be repeating some of the things that we already have debunked or seen. Then explainers is a good idea. Don't be like worry about this. This is, you can see there's two links. The links that you have in the right button are two links to two papers, both published in Nature, one in 2021, one in 2024. And this diagram show us, all of us, super claims, subclaims, and sub-subclaims of different types of climate disinformation that these academics track in the last 20 years, all around the world. What they have done is to create an enormous database to analyze that and to give us an easier way to identify in each of the articles or the debunks that we are preparing, where are we? We are in the red, in the green, in the orange, probably you can't read because the letter is small, but as you're going to have the presentation, you're going to go there. What the super claims are is global warming is not happening, human greenhouse gases are not causing the global warming, climate impacts are not bad, as some actors want us to believe, or climate, I can't even read, climate movements are not reliable. These are four of the main narratives. And also we have, go ahead, Daniel, here are some example. It doesn't matter what we are doing, because this is not going to change the climate change. This idea of, okay, I'm not any longer saying that climate change is not happening, because the climate crisis are constantly in many countries happening, and people that are connected in the social media platforms see all that climate crisis occurring almost every day, but they are denying that there are actions or solutions that can be done by governments, companies, and also individuals. Go ahead, please. These are the same paper that I mentioned, that again present the super claim, climate solution don't work, and sub-claims about that, and sub-claims about that. And you probably can, or we can probably find in the future some content that can go inside one of these categories, but most of all the content that I've been seeing in the last years are perfectly described in one of these boxes or categories. Then I recommend all of you, like covering climate or whatever, to take a look to this category and paper to help your reporting. Go ahead, Daniel, because I know we want to have time for the questions. Then as we mentioned before, we have this first moment of climate change doesn't exist. The second moment of solutions are not efficient or are not good. And not new, but the new trend from some time ago, it is this conspiracy theory twist. Then climate change does not exist. It exists, but it's not human. Now it is human, but not because of human activity, but because it is created by elites. And then, as Charlotte mentioned, that will appear the agenda of 2030 or the chemtrails or other type of crazy content that some of our colleagues believe are crazy, and then people are not necessarily going to believe in. But our monitoring shows us that a lot of people believe on it and start to follow this idea that in lots of cases is created as a way to be more free or aligned with freedom, aligned with not necessarily follow the powerful people, whatever. Go ahead, please, Daniel. Here we have some examples. Then you, Daniel, gonna be just following. They are all examples from the US. From the last year, we launched Factchequeado 3 years ago. We all already see all this. We didn't mention before, but all the story related to why electric cars are not safe, or why electric energy is not good for humans, etc. The fake clouds and the clouds created by the elites. And then what we are doing, exactly what Charlotte mentioned, related to try not necessarily just to report on the policy level, but report on the facts on people. What is happening with these policies or not actions for the daily life? Then this is a story related to what happened to farmers with the climate, and what happened with health in the United States with the hot temperatures. Go ahead, Daniel, please. What happened with the coal and the situation, and why, particularly with the Latinos, as you probably imagine, Latino communities lives in places where they can afford that houses or buildings, that they are in lots of cases in places where they suffer more the climate crisis. Then they suffer because they receive the higher prices on their insurance, and that can be an easy way to explain these people why climate change is not a problem of the elites, of the governments only, but of their daily life and routines. And before going to our strategy, I want to also reflect with you on this idea about the AI created animals or AI created ecology or environmental situation. And on this, we republished an article written by our colleagues from Maldita, from Spain, about how these cute creatures can be a big problem if we think about younger generation. And I'm assuming lots of you remember when you were at school and your teacher asked you to look for a picture of a bear or to look for a picture of some birds or whatever. If a children gonna do this today and go to the internet to Google it or even to TikTok it, they probably not gonna have a way to differentiate if there is a real image or an AI created image. And then it's a problem. It's not a problem for the future. It's a problem that we are dealing with now. And then my comment for the reporters on this is, I know that people on social gonna be smiling and saying, oh, this is cute. This is not a problem. This is not necessarily harmful disinformation. On the opposite of that message, I encourage you to also prevent the audience about this not necessarily cute side of these type of images or this type of content. This content can make a disruption of our ecological knowledge, or can be us think that they are creatures or or groups of species. How do you say, Cris, in English? Okay, groups of animals or whatever. Yeah. Species, okay. Species that they are no longer, but the AI recreate them. And then I think this is a kind of call to action to all of you. Be aware of the AI making trouble to all the ones covering environmental issues. And yeah, then I have 5 more minutes, Daniel, or I need to keep here? 5 more minutes.
Yeah, if you can, Sonia's shot, ask, and maybe you can finish with these tips for what kind of tools are available to fact check fake news, and maybe you can mention it.
Okay.
And okay, 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. Then a key what we are doing, or how we can deal with all these big challenges or big problems. What we need to know, what misinformation is circulating. Then there are different ways to monitoring in the open social networks, and I'm not going to be like deeply on that, but anyone that can be interested can reach to me or to Cris, and we can tell you more about that. But we also go to the next one. We also insist, at least when we are focusing on the global south or the Latinos who get or consume their information in Spanish in the US, also to focus on the close groups like WhatsApp, because sometimes what happens with WhatsApp is that bad actors test their narratives there. And if we have the chance to identify that narratives before it's too late and they are already spread in all the open social networks, that's much better for us to have a strategy that can be more impactful. Then this is the WhatsApp that we have in Factchequeado. A lot of people ask us always how we choose what we debunk, how we choose what we're going to focus on, because always going to be more lies than what we have the chance to tackle. And then we always look at the same time virality and harmful. Then that's why I mentioned in this story about the AI and the animals, don't just think that is viral but not necessarily harmful. Try to look forward and see is there harmful there or not. Go ahead, please. Then what process do we follow to verify? Find the source of this information, where did it come from? Try to know about this case. There are a lot of disinformation, as I mentioned, that is not completely false. And a strategy that can be that is recommended is, as Charlotte mentioned before, is be really transparent about what you know and what the sources know and what the sources don't know. Because all the conspiracy theories, if you are not clear on what is not known, gonna be attacking you or discrediting you. What has been added, what has been omitted, what has been invented, add the necessary context to understand it. Mention if there are an issue or denial, and ask also how do we make go viral the information that we are presenting. Like, don't finish, as I mentioned, when you write down your article, because you are not done there. You need to think about if there's a way that I can present with my team this story in a way that can be more empathic, that can be someone else identifying, hey, If I start the presentation saying my grandfather shared with me this story yesterday, and I can find that it's not true, someone can identify that this is the same happened to him or to her. If I start being just reporting, perhaps there are people that are never going to pay attention to me. Then think about formats also. Go ahead, please. Then what do we document ourselves? Scientific literature, the source of the expert, and official sources. And we think all of this together is always needed. And I know there are going to be journalists from some countries in Latin America region that are going to say us, our government never going to answer us. I always repeat the same. You should ask them each time again and again. They cannot reply you. Lots of the publications in the United States are not replying any longer to us, but we make the request every time, because that's part of our methodology, and that allowed us to explain the public that we are not biased, that we are not against anyone, that we are trying to be professional and explain the phenomenon as good as we can with the evidence that we can obtain. Go ahead, and I promise I'm almost done. Who are we addressing? Then we need to be clear to point the answers. We need to avoid technical terms and complex words. And this is not mean not to be deep or profound in our reporting. Is to do this double check of our reporting and avoid technical words that can make a lot of people believe that that article or that video is not necessarily looking for there as an audience. Like, we need to redefine our way of presenting if we want to be the general public, not necessarily politician, not necessarily intellectual, not necessarily the academics. And also, can scientific literature be provided for the ones that want to go further? Go ahead, please. Then these are the categories. Lots of presentation people ask me, okay, what are the categories you are using? We use false, true, need context, need evidence. That's it, or need proofs. And here they are much more like tips for communicate or for effective communication. Basically, and I'm gonna just select 3 of them. Don't attack or ridicule those who you are trying to convince. This is a lesson that we learn. People don't want to feel they are wrong. People need not to feel they are fooled. Like, there's a strategy starting saying, I can understand why you thought about this, or I can understand why you believe on this, and then twist it or change it. Be really careful about or with half-truth, and also avoid these both sides. Like, in journalists, there's a lot of call the other part of the story. In this climate, disinformation is not 2 sides of the story. The 2 sides of the story is disinformation. We need to be focusing on the evidence base. Go ahead, please. And then, before publishing strict review process, the importance of the date. This is crucial for science content. We saw it during the pandemic. The scientific content may change. Then focus on the data and be clear about that when you are reporting. And have a correction policy and indicate in a transparent way if you are correcting you. All of these can contribute to avoid harassment from critics. And as I always said, it's key to collaborate. These are all the partners that we have in Factchequeado. We have 129 already that help us to reach more people. They are diverse, they are big media, they are small media, they are trusted messengers in their own communities, then they are the ones that people trust on. What we learn, you can see it there, and then perhaps you can go to the last one to show the audience my contact information, and also Isabel, that is the science reporter. Yeah, go ahead directly. What we learn, there's tips there on how you can do it. Then you can reach to me or to Isabel if you have any question or comment on this. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, Laura. And for who is listening us, I'm gonna put all these presentations in course of Night Center in platform. And also for who is listening in Portuguese, I read that some mentions we had some kind of problem with sound, but we're gonna fix it. And thank you so much, Lau. We don't have so much time, but I want to listen Charlotte. And I have just one simple question for you, Charlotte. And just I will make some questions just one for Cris, one for Laura, and for Charlotte. Just to know from you, because you represent UN here, and I want to just to know how challenging do you imagine the climate theme or even this COP in Brazil will be, considering the global context and the current diplomatic crisis between Brazil and United States. And I know this is not the best time for another COP, but we need a COP here in Amazon. And I want to hear you about the global context and the diplomatic crisis with US and not only Brazil, but different countries, right?
So I think, climate change, as we've all said, knows no borders. It is a global crisis, and it's a problem that, we're all going to have to come together and address. And I think that, as the UN and certainly the Secretary General has been very clear that his position on climate action hasn't changed. He is 100% committed to prioritizing, addressing the climate crisis. And he is very, outspoken about that, and has, really put this front and center. So, for us, the work continues for sure. I think it's really important that, this COP is indeed coming at an important time for many different reasons, actually, not least because, we're kind of reaching, as scientists have told us, that we are running out of time for urgent climate action. And from, in terms of my work, I think that, for us, and this is why it's actually been so inspiring and illuminating to hear and see the presentations from the excellent speakers today, because I think we've really, between us, shown what a challenge climate disinformation and information integrity can be in the climate space, right? This isn't just a kind of like add-on. It's not just an additional extra that, that we need to think about. This really has to be at the core of our thinking around climate action. So for us, this COP is really important too, because this issue is really highly visible now. Thanks in part to the COP30 presidency and the efforts of, the multi-stakeholder coalition that I mentioned. So it's absolutely key. And we're really relying on the media and journalists to do all of the credible reporting around COP that we need, knowing that before COPs, every single time, we will see a spike in those tactics and behaviors that we all talked about, trying to undermine the international cooperation and agreement around climate.
Yeah, Laura and Cris are journalists. So Cris and Laura, do you want to ask something for Charlotte?
I was replying the questions that I have in the
Charlotte, very, very briefly, how can we help the UN? I mean, what does UN needs from fact checkers? I mean, Laura and I We're running big organizations in different countries. We are bilingual. So what would be the thing that we can do for you? And that probably could work for others in the audience.
Yeah. And, I would also throw it back and say, we're here to support too. But one of the things that's been so interesting for me in doing this work on information integrity for the last, coming up on 3 years, I've been focusing exclusively on it and focusing on climate so much over the last year or so, is that there are so many pockets of expertise and action out there, right? And, I'm looking at it now, all of you on this call. But I would really love to work together to connect the dots and bring all of that together across, not just the Latin America region, but really globally, so that we can share, as we've all said, we all, I think, gave that message that a lot of these tactics are the same. I think you said the meta-narratives are the same. And that also means a lot of the responses are the same. And we were all very aligned, right? So how can we share that information with those who need it? And, we have various ideas for how to do that. And I mentioned the global initiative ahead of COP. One of the things that we did was put out this call to action for this Mutual call to action for solutions. So I really encourage everyone to submit to that. We really want to try and come up with, a great collection of actionable efforts and initiatives that then could potentially be replicated or scaled up elsewhere, right? So that's one very specific, concrete way. But, I'm always available and happy to talk. The UN, we don't have much by way of money, right? We're in the same situation as everyone else right now. But we do have, obviously, a deep commitment to this issue. Also, we have a really global reach. I have amazing colleagues and who work with civil society and journalists and others in every country, pretty much, who have that local expertise and knowledge that we all talked about. So, that's something I really want to harness and tap into, because it's going to take us addressing this everywhere, right? And on all fronts. So I'd love to work on that together moving forward.
Count on me.
Yeah, so, me too, for sure. And I'm sorry, and I think you mentioned, Charlotte, that a lot of the research I have been done in the North, or in English and in the North. And I think one of the things that we've learned also in the last decade is we need to have much more knowledge about what's happening in languages different than English. And also, as a journalist, know much more about our audience. There's a question from Eric asking which is the best format to use. And my question is not that I don't want to address this, that depends on your audience, or the audience or community you are serving. Because if you are serving a community that can be older people, perhaps audio in WhatsApp can be the best fit for them. But if you are serving another one that are younger, that's going to be TikTok or Discord or other places. And then my experience showed me that it's not necessary just one model to follow or to replicate, but that is part of what is amazing from our time. Like, we have a lot of challenges, but we also have an immense opportunities to learn from another, and to not necessarily invent the wheel every time, but to learn from other and adapt it and be efficient. Just focus on what is our probably main challenge, is how can we better reach the one that need us most, or need our content most.
Okay, Charlotte, just to thank you again, and reinforce the invitation for you. Hope to see you here in Belém to COP 30, and just to listen from you how I expect to first COP in the Amazon region, and I hope to see you here in Belém, and also Laura and Cris here for COP 30.
I really look forward to it. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it was great to connect with you guys.
Okay, but I want to finish with one question to Cris and Laura, and we can finish with that. Because we're going to have a session with climate solutions, or solutions journalism, and I think it's important to hear from you. I think this is the main question about solutions journalism and climate solutions journalism. How to talk about local solutions or climate solutions without denying the reality, the global situation, the global context, or not to being naive, like a naive journalist.
I can go, Cris, if you want. I think, as Cris mentioned, focus on the local level. It is what all the research show us make more sense for people. Like, people want to be connected with the stories, and at the same time connecting the local story with the global one. And I think that is part of what the solution journalists also try to do. It's not necessary that you are inventing or creating a new strategy in each of the cities or towns where you are focusing on solution journalism, but you are trying to design what is best for that place in that moment for the people that you are engaging with. But at the same time, not to be naive, connecting the dots with the main narratives or the main story or the detractor actors or the ones that want that solution to be a failure, or the ones that are going to be adversaries criticizing you publicly. And I think what we also learn from research is that people can believe or not on you, but people don't want to be manipulated. People don't like to feel that someone else is trying to use them. And I think this applies both for solution journalists or to what we are talking today related to disinformation.
Danielle, if I may add one sentence to Laura, is that you should grab your audience with a good headline and a good lead about their reality, and that demands local knowledge. But your second or third paragraph or your second or third minute should be on explaining that whatever happens to you in your city, your neighborhood, is happening to someone else, elsewhere, in exactly the same way. So the idea of sharing a reality in a level needs to be there, without forgetting that you have to be attractive to your audience, and you will only manage to do that if you speak their language in a very easy and understandable way.
Yeah, that's why also collaboration and cross-border and working with others, not just journalists, makes more sense than ever. Because if you find the way to do this, local reporting with local knowledge, with the same language, slang, etc., plus the possibility to present why that is not anecdotal evidence, but it is part of a system, or it is a pattern that you can not explain or convince, but show the people. I think that's why stories continue to be the thing that our brain prefer. Then stories plus system, I think it's a better way to address all.
And Danielle, I'm not gonna show put you in the spot, but that's exactly why we need Amazonia Vox, because you and your team are the ones on the spot. You're capable of talking about Belém as no one else in this call. So you're so needed, and your effort is so needed. And I mean, media in Brazil should be really thankful that you exist and your effort is taking off. So, I mean, honestly, that's the kind of effort we need. We need to merge your team with people in the southeast of Brazil and in Latin America and globally to try to deeply understand what's going to happen in COP30 and after that.
Yeah, some people even here in Belém, but I was reading and I study about how people live in country during COPs, understanding COP, and they doesn't understand too much. So some people say, oh, it's like a World Cup. like a soccer World Cup, but it's not. It's a cup, and it's not Olympic Games, but I think it's more important than Olympic Games. And we had the World Cup, World Cup with teams around the world, and we have time for refreshing, time for breathe, time for a short stop. So climate change impacts sports. So with all the things that are connected. So thank you so much again, Cris, Charlotte, and Laura. And I'm so proud and thank you and Night Center, because like you said, we are an independent and small outlet with just 2 years based in Belém, and we are here talking with a global audience with some reference in this issue like you. And I think it's just the beginning. And so thank you so much. Hope to see you in Belém in November. And for who is listening and watching us, I invite you to go to Amazonia Vox. It's not Amazon Vox because it's not a store. It's Amazonia in Portuguese or Amazonia in Spanish, amazoniavox.com, because we start a series about how to know about Belém for who doesn't know Belém. A little bit about our history, about climate, about our culture, and etc. So I talk too much, even in English. Think about it in Portuguese. And thank you so much, all of you, for watching us, and Charlotte for your time, Laura and Cris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and congratulations,
everyone. It was great being here.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Larissa was in the backstage helping me.
Thank you, Larissa.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And Ricardo, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.